Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Episode 11 of Fourth and Wrong. Today is May 20th, 2024. Today's episode, we discuss the ESPN Power Rankings post-spring, teams most likely to fall from those rankings, in our opinions, and head coaching rankings, and much, much more. Go follow us on Twitter at Fourth and Wrong Pod, YouTube, of course, Fourth and Wrong Podcast, where we go live on Mondays, 8:30, 8-ish. You guys get the drill by now. Man, last time we had, over the last two episodes, I think we've had probably in total like 2,500 live viewers.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
It's been awesome. You can also catch replays of the show on YouTube as well as the podcast version on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Chris, crazy week in like a lot of sports. Maybe not college football, perhaps, but you had the PGA Championship, which was crazy. Yeah. Scotty Scheffler getting arrested. You got the NBA.
I forgot about that. Dude, Twitter in general was the most unhinged I have ever seen it. Maybe ever. I don't know what was going on.
Elite meme day.
No doubt. Was an elite meme day. Yeah.
And I will say too about that, like ESPN was covering it like Scotty Scheffler was the one that had murdered that man.
So I woke up that day at 11:30. This sleep cycle has been atrocious. And so here's the thing. So like the new job, I'm like video editing and producing Matt's show. Matt's show is on at like 3 p.m. Central Time. It's like 4 p.m. here. It doesn't until like 7:30 our time. We do our daily show between 8 and 8:30. And then like, after that, it's like, so the routine is I've been trying to like not stay up late. And then every night around like 12 or 1, I'm like, I got a second win. Let's go rewatch the OC. But I woke up.
Great show, by the way.
I'm in season 1 right now. I don't think I've ever watched consistently. It is, by the way, side note, Ryan is possibly the worst actor in the history of fucking acting.
How does that show hold up 20 years later?
You tell me. It's the whole show. It's the whole show.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's whatever. No, but like I woke up at 11:30 and I was like, what is happening with Scotty Scheffler? Because I just saw memes everywhere. It was like Friday morning. And it was like I thought the whole thing was a joke at first. Like, yeah, he got arrested, and they waited like by the way, the first thing that I saw was a text from you talking about it, and I was like, huh? Fill me in. And then the first, like I searched his name, spelled his name correctly, no big deal. And the first thing I saw was a meme somebody made of him walking out with Mini Men from 50 Cent as like the background. It was incredible, man.
That was incredible. Yeah, I mean, I was watching it live before I took my kids to school, and then I was like, I got to continue to listen to this on Sirius XM because it's just something that you've never seen before, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, ESPN was like chilling photo of Scotty Scheffler in a jail cell this morning. It's like, guys, no one's got chills from that. Everyone's laughing because it's outside of the reason that there was all those cops in the first place, obviously very sad, but it's hilarious. It's like the nerdy guy that goes to sleep at 9 at the sleepover got arrested in the morning.
By the way, also, he's 6'3". He's like a big dude.
Yeah.
His mugshot and like jail, like combine record was 170.
No chance he's 170.
There's no chance. There's absolutely no chance. But good for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's not often that you get a felony assault of an officer and get out of jail like 10 minutes later.
I tell you what, it's almost never like that. Dude, the whole thing was like, it was so well, hold on. We skipped over this. If you're watching, thank you very much. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. First and foremost, we really appreciate it. I'm trying to build that up. I threw out some stuff on Instagram last week about it. I think we gained like 50 new subscribers, so we really do appreciate that. It helps us a ton, so please go do that. Share with your friends, all that good stuff. So You explain what happened because I am the most. Oh yeah, and they postponed John Glasgow brings up a good point. They postponed the proceedings too.
Yeah, so I thought that these charges were going to be dropped like immediately. But yeah, I've been seeing tonight on Twitter that they were not dropped. So that's interesting. Yeah, so Scotty Scheffler, so this is the second day of the tournament.
Of a, of
You
a,
know,
of a major.
of a major.
Yeah.
He's coming off having a baby last week. Him personally, he gave the birth.
Nice. You can do that now in 2024.
Yep. And he was just scheduled to have like an 8:30 tee time. So of course he's gonna be one of the first people to arrive at course. It's like 6 in the morning. He's pulling in, it's dark outside, and he's like, wow, his police presence is just insane. Now, Chris, when you play in the PGA and you go to these events, you're given a car. Title sponsor, usually one of the car companies, gives every golfer the same exact car. So typically these cops know exactly what cars coming in are players and which are not.
Is that
But
true?
this one cop did
I know
not.
that.
Yeah, remember when they were out at like the Buick Open and Tiger like wrecked his Buick off the cliff?
No, but okay.
He shattered his leg. So anyways, cop not only didn't realize that it was a golfer, but like the golfer. And Scotty Scheffler was like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to get to my tee time." I don't know what that guy thought he meant. Maybe just a tee time down the road, just another regular guy. But um, I think the wording was he attached himself to Scotty's car, which
Been there, brother.
and Scotty started driving away.
That's
And
hard to
apparently,
do. But he was driving away. Maybe this was a meme, but what I saw was at 7 miles an hour for 15 feet.
yeah, it sounds like that would be accurate.
Okay.
Though I do know that it was enough to irreparably damage a pair of $89.99 pants, which it's tough. You know, you can't be doing that as a professional.
No, that is tough.
So, Scotty Scheffler immediately realizes that hey, this man is attached to my car. I probably should stop. In turn, he stopped, and the officer pulls him from the vehicle, throws him up against the side of the car, cuffs him. And that's when we get Jeff Darlington from ESPN's live coverage with his cell phone, where Scotty Scheffler's going, "Help me, man," as he's getting pulled away.
It's always tough when you're
in his ankle high socks, like the 28-year-old that he is.
The athlete that you aren't.
Yep. Right. And
it's always tough when you're driving a car and the check officer light comes on. That's always one of my least favorite features. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, they, of course, ESPN and every other outlet runs with it. Like, what are we going to do? Like, does he come back and play golf? What does this do for his career? And it's like, guys, I'm sure that it's going to be handled pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it was, and he comes out and fires a 66, his lowest round ever in a second round of a major.
Birdie the first hole.
Yeah.
Birdie, like that would have been, if he would have won the major, we would have been doing a different show. We would have been doing the top 5 biggest white accomplishments in sports history, and that would have been one of them. Like that would have been absolutely one of them. I don't know what the other 4 would have been, to be honest, but that would have been one of them. Maybe Cooper DeJean getting drafted as a defensive back, that probably would have been number 2. But yeah, I mean, like what was weird too is that like they postponed everything 80 minutes. Like, not how I saw that was going to go. And then I saw that Will Zalatoris was like, yeah, they should have postponed everything by like 4 hours. And I would love to have been in the room when they were like, hey, listen, dude, listen, I know it's going to be a long weekend. Scotty is in jail. And they're like, Scotty, my stepson, the one that's home from community college? No. Scotty Scheffler, he is in jail for a felony. Like, could not be a more straight-laced. He is what, like, if he wasn't doing this, I know he's not Mormon, but if he wasn't playing golf and he showed up to my front door in a Dwight Schrute outfit with a bike helmet, like asking me to read the Book of Mormon, I would probably believe it.
Yeah, no, that would be pretty accurate. crazy weekend, obviously, with that. Xander finally gets one after so many top 10s, top 5s in majors, never closing the deal. Did you see this stat by Justin Ray from SiriusXM? Lowest combined score to par by the entire field. So basically, total cumulative score in a PGA Championship. The lowest ever was in 1995 at Riviera, plus 40. Valhalla was minus 214.
Wait,
like the
what?
easiest PGA Championship of all time.
Wow.
So maybe we don't give Scotty a lot of credit. I mean, it's the easiest course ever. You couldn't come out and you were in the cell for like 30 minutes. You couldn't come out and win.
Him warming up in the cell. Our buddy, I think his name is Sam. It's not Sam Snead for sure. It's Sam Swank or something like that. He's like, we were supposed to have him on the podcast like 2 years ago. He went to the University of South Carolina. He's like a Instagram dude, TikToker, like whatever you want to say. He's hilarious. Like, he's hilarious. He put up a bit about it, and he's like talking about, like, can you imagine if you were drunk waking up in a cell and Scotty Scheffler was in the cell, like the drunk tank? It's like, Scotty Scheffler? Like, what is happening? Like, what?
He's just in there like doing this like little
He's firing my hips. Firing my
hips, baby.
Hey, buddy, you mind pressing down here? Help me stretch this quad out? Sure, brother. Sure. Probably a lot of eager helpers on the stretching in jail. I would say that.
Yeah, you might be right on that.
Yeah.
NBA playoffs have been fun. Anthony Edwards, I love that dude. He's fun to watch.
Yeah. I love that he treats every live interview like we do of the podcast.
Yeah. He doesn't care what he says. You've got Luka, former Hawk great, Atlanta Hawk great, Luka Doncic. The trade's really working out. You know, Trey, I think, is going to be traded in the offseason.
I hate that is he really?
There's rumors. The Hawks, they did get the number 1 pick in the worst draft in 20 years, so that's good.
That part is awful. Also, somebody posted like right after they got the number 1 pick, it was like, dude, they should have had Anthony Edwards like years ago. And then Trey Young tweeted out something about how he's like, yeah, we should have already had him, but I'm not going to get into that right now. It's like, you know what, Trey, why don't you? You got nothing but time right now.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Please tell all of us what happened.
You've got the Knicks, those loud Knicks fans. So, you know, every game, it's like they go out to the outside of Madison Square Garden, and it's just like a bunch of jabronis out there just going crazy, and they never win anything significant.
I was happy about that. I was very happy about that. And they also they got beat badly. I will say this: as much as I love the range that we have right now, I know that there's probably no one tuning in to hear about the Knicks. Which I still watched it. Like 2 Game 7s on Sunday is awesome, but what an unlikable franchise.
Yes, in general.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into football. Where shall we start here, sir? ESPN?
So ESPN updated this today. Me and Tyler, just listen, little peel behind the curtain here. Hold on. Where to go? Yay! Okay, there it is. We both just had long days, and we were sitting here. We're like, man, what are we going to talk about tonight? Dude, we'll get to this later. But I had to go to the doctor today, and then I decided to spend the afternoon with my mom. We went to go see a movie. Massive miscommunication and confusion. She thought I wanted to see Planet of the Apes. Not once have I ever wanted to see Planet of the Apes, Tyler. Not once ever.
Is that out in movie theaters or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. God, how many of those have there been?
Dude, that like it's Fast and Furious level like numbers, and they've been putting them out since like the 70s. But are there people that like really like those movies? Like, I don't. It was a long.
Are there multiple Planets of the Apes, or is just one planet that just?
No clue. I will say there was only 4 people in the entire theater: me, my mom, and then 2 people right in front of us. And at the end of the movie, I was like holding the door for him, and I was joking around. I was like, the first 2 hours were tough, but that last 30 minutes really, really brought it home. And they started laughing. And this woman, she goes, I just, you know what? Too many monkeys for me. It was too many monkeys for me. And it's only one human in that whole movie. And I was like, that probably was a giveaway from the title, but yes.
There's a full planet of them, actually.
The whole planet. The whole planet of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, but when we were talking about this, we were like, what are we going to discuss tonight? We hop on ESPN, and who's the one that updated it, by the way? It's not Schlabach, is it? Is he still working? It is Mark Schlabach. Served him one time at Houston's, just a delightful man. But they have updated the post-spring top 25 rankings on ESPN. Now, this is not FPI, I don't believe. I think this is just his rankings. Okay. Yep. Scrolling through it, Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2. I think that's got to be the standard everywhere. I would be, unless you're just trying to create headlines, I don't see why they would like those would be any different anywhere. 3 Texas, 4 Oregon, 5 Notre Dame.
So we talked about Notre Dame, and I said they would maybe be one of my bust teams, relevant to something like this, where people have them in the top 10, top 5, I guess, for Schlabach.
Right.
I've talked about this. They have to replace both tackles. But I totally forgot that they brought in Mike Denbrock from LSU. That could be a pretty big pickup, I would say.
The guy who had the best offense in the country last year?
Yeah, since considered the Heisman winner. Yeah. Leonard's ankle injury, like he's still been out. Like he still hasn't practiced. I mean, he's expected to be ready for the fall, but it's been almost a year since he's played at that point. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's intriguing to me. Top 5 is big. We'll see.
Yeah, I thought. Well, and again, like they're a top 5 team, and you go on the road in their first game, and I think they're a 1-point underdog or a 1-point favorite or something like that. But we differ on that because I'm high on Notre Dame. Anyway, 6 Ole Miss, 7 Bama, 8 Mizzou, 9 Utah, 10 Michigan. So here's the thing that stands out to me the most of this year. I feel like in most years, there's at least the top 5. You're like, that top 5 I'm comfortable with. I think that top 5 makes the most sense. There could be 5 teams that are really good. And I don't know if it's just like the uncertainty of having a 12-team playoff or what. But this year, it just feels like there's only 2 teams that are legit. Like I shouldn't say that. There's only 2 teams that I would feel comfortable with being like, that is absolutely where they belong in that top 10. Because from 3 to 10, I think it's a crapshoot. I think everyone is kind of just throwing in Texas and Oregon right after that. Ole Miss is going to be somewhere in there. And then like the usual suspects, right? With Bama and Notre Dame, and then you find 2 more. But I just thought that was a little bit surprising. Let's go outside the top 10. So Florida State at 11, and then from then on you have Penn State, NC State, that jumped out to me a lot because I did not realize they were ranked top 15.
So I heard a note about this today, and he probably mentions it somewhere in here. Yeah. So 4 of the 4 best teams, pretty much in the ACC, they don't have to play. Florida State, Miami, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and they're probably in the top 5 of the ACC. So, and the ACC is never really more than 5 deep of good teams.
Maybe that's a smart move because you're trying to have like that gives them a better chance of having more teams with 10 and 11 wins. But at the same time, are any of those teams going to be trusted? I don't know. I don't know if that's like the right move as a conference, but maybe it wasn't on purpose.
Who knows? They get Grayson McCall, who I think like 2 years, everyone was talking about him being like a 1st-round pick. Yeah. And then everyone thought he was going to transfer to possibly Florida. And apparently there's rumors that he couldn't get into Florida based on his grades or something like that. And then he was going to go somewhere else, and he never went. And I don't really know what he did at Coastal Carolina last year. Like, I feel like I didn't hear about him at all last year.
Was he at Coastal last year? I know they opened at UCLA, and I thought that was going to be a really fun game, and it ended up being like such an.
It says he battled a head injury last year.
Oh, okay. Like emotionally, or?
Yeah. I mean, aren't we all?
That's for sure. All right. After that, LSU, Tennessee, that 15 spot, Tennessee, that's the one that stands out to me. That's why NC State stood out the most, because Tennessee has them on the road. Clemson, Kansas State. Kansas State's a team we're going to talk about a lot this offseason, I think, because there's a lot of people that are very high on them. And I can't tell if it's because they're going to be good or if it's because they are playing in what is now maybe the weakest. Well, I mean, maybe it's better than the ACC, but the Big 12 is wide open this year after like you have to view the Big 12 almost as like, okay, what if Georgia and Bama left the SEC? But that's still not even a good. It's probably more like, what if Ohio State and Michigan left the Big 10? Because that's how top heavy that conference has been, and the two teams that have run it and won like every single conference title and all that kind of stuff. Like it seems like for like the last decade plus. It's gonna be super interesting. I think 18 Oklahoma, 19 Oklahoma State. That's a team people aren't talking a lot about. 20 Arizona. Super interesting on that because we talked about this last year, one of the most underrated teams throughout the season. They got to 10 wins. They barely lost to USC. They lost in double overtime in week 2 on the road at Mississippi State. And then you look at the end of the year and they're 9-3. I think they lost convincingly to Washington or Oregon, one of those two. But if they have like just some luck go the other way, like they're knocking on the door of the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, look, they lost Jed Fish, so
Right.
He was only there for like 2 years, so completely start over again. I guess they hired San Jose State's coach, which Schlabach says is one of the more underrated head coaches in the FBS.
Okay.
I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever heard his name. No Fafita, obviously. Like these two guys, Fafita and McMillan, their receiver. I was shocked that they decided to stay at Arizona. Like that NIL bag must be deep because
no. That's the main point. That's the main takeaway of what you just said. The NIL bag is not deep. Remember that's a university that somehow misplaced $240 million.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the reasons Fish was like, I'm not staying here, because he got offered from Washington and he was like, you guys can counter. And they're like, counter with fucking what, dude? Like, what do you? I think those two players staying is one of the wildest stories of the offseason that we haven't talked about, because in this day and age, when you can transfer like immediately, that's shocking that they didn't.
Very. So we'll have to see when that. Virginia Tech 21, Kansas 22, Iowa 23, Miami 24, USC 25.
All right, from that group,
he dropped out Louisville, Kentucky, and Texas A&M out of his top 25 after spring.
This is off topic, but dude, I hate Virginia Tech.
Really?
I think that the Inner Sandman thing is really cool. The stadium sucks. I feel like Blacksburg itself is like a gross, like always overcast place. The uni combos, it's the worst color combination besides Bowling Green, maybe in the country. Like the maroon, like dark maroon and orange. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, that's fair. Those don't go well together at all.
No. And they used to be like a staple in like the top 20, maybe top 15.
Yeah, when they got Mike Vick, they obviously spiked, but yeah, for the most part, they were like a top 20 team.
It just feels like they've never really played anyone. Like and maybe that sounds weird, but like they played in the Big East when they were good, right? And then now they're in the ACC. There's just not a lot about them that I really like. It's not that I don't respect them or anything like that. I just don't like them. It's just like, blech.
Well, it's the same issue that you've seen at Miami, Florida, and Florida State. All the best players in the state used to go to those three schools. So all three schools used to be awesome. And then at some point, whether it was, when Saban got to Bama, Dabo's taken a lot of players out of Florida over the years. People started leaving the state, became kind of cool to not go to a Florida school, and all the teams suffered. And same thing, like the DMV area, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, like Virginia Tech used to scoop up all the best players from that region. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, I don't know what the recruiting ranking has been like, but it can't have been in the top 25 the last few years.
Probably not. No, I don't mean we're talking out of our ass a little bit here, but anyway, that's not Virginia Tech talk. We'll probably, again, that could be a Kansas State situation where I know people are high on them. They could be better than people think. Anyway, all right. So here's what I want to say. Like, you see the rankings that we just went through, and you guys can talk about this in the comments as well. I know that I just checked this out. You guys have like 19 new comments here. You see the top 10, and obviously the top 25. We just went through it. and let's hear from you all as well. But like, what team do you think is the most likely to drop out of the top 10 and or top 25? But I would say the top 10. And which team do you think is most likely to jump into it by the end of the season as well, based on what we just saw?
I'll stick with my Notre Dame pick, although I could also go with Ole Miss because I just need to see it with Ole Miss. I feel like there's always some sort of hype around Ole Miss since Kiffin's been there, and their defense just has never been good enough. Now they brought in a lot of talent in the portal, so it's got to be good enough this year. But that would be one team I'm like, okay, granted they don't have the toughest schedule in the SEC, but it's still an SEC schedule.
Yeah.
So that would be one, but I still go Notre Dame, and then team to completely drop out of the top 25,
or just either way. Yeah, go ahead.
Or no, you said kind of make their way up into the top 10.
Yeah.
I can't. I want to look at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Just because of the quarterback, but again, that's an unknown. I actually do like Kansas State, and obviously Oklahoma, Texas are gone now.
Mm-hmm.
You bring in Utah, and that's going to be your biggest competition. They're the highest ranked team on this list, from the Big 12.
And they don't play them.
They don't play them in the regular season?
No, they have UT. Here's their schedule: UT Martin at Tulane. Tulane's getting some pretty marquee home games the past couple of years. Arizona at home, at BYU on a Saturday. They play Arizona on a Friday. Oklahoma State at home, a week off before at Colorado, at West Virginia, Kansas at home, week off, and then at Houston, Arizona State at home, Cincy at home, and at Iowa State.
And everything's gonna be about their quarterback, Avery Johnson, who came in last year. He's got wheels.
Right.
And then they got Dylan Edwards, who was like one of the 4 good players on Colorado. He's a true freshman last year that just went off in those first few games. Yep. It says in the article that they have to replace 3 offensive linemen, but I just think with their schedule mixed with, I love Kleiman as a coach. I can see them jumping over to the top 10. What about you?
So real quick with Kansas State, I was going to say they do seem like they always play a good brand of football. Like it's like a tough brand of football. So I can see that, and then not playing Utah, I think is a gift, right? And Utah's schedule is not super easy. That one seems like it probably is. For me, this is a cop out because they're literally ranked 10th, but I think Michigan. Michigan just lost so much, and it's not the fact that they lost 13 players in the NFL draft. They lost a first-round quarterback. They lost one of the most productive running backs they've had in history, which is really saying something. They still have 2 defensive players that are mocked to go in the top 10 this upcoming year, and coming off a defense that was the best in the country last year statistically. The schedule: Fresno State, Texas at home, Arkansas State, USC at home, of course, Minnesota. Then you have at Washington, at Illinois, Michigan State, Oregon at home, at Indiana, Northwestern, at Ohio State. That schedule is tailor-made for 9-3. You're going to lose to Texas and lose to Ohio State, I think, right off the bat. Just right off the bat.
Yeah, and Oregon's not going to be easy either. Even though you do get 2 of those 3 games at home, Oregon and Texas are going to be preseason top 5 teams.
And they're still playing a conference championship where it's just the top 2 teams, right? Mm-hmm. That's what somebody was saying, how like they were upset because they could theoretically play Ohio State. In years past, this might have happened where they play Ohio State they could play them 3 times in one season, which honestly, man, I don't think that's bad for college football necessarily. I wouldn't want to see it every year, but I don't think we will. I think you lose to Texas. I think you lose to Ohio State. Oregon doesn't seem easy. Here's the thing with Michigan, that you have a brand new head coach. We have said this over and over again. Dude, Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe his first year, right? He lost, Kirby lost to Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech his first year. And no part of me is comparing Sherman Peak to what was his name? Sherman Moore?
Sherman Moore.
Sherman Peak was a receiver at Clemson 8 years ago. Sharon Moore. I'm not comparing him to either of those coaches. I'm just saying it takes a minute. Yeah, I don't think he would do it either. But like, I just think that in year one, where Harbaugh took half the coaching staff, you don't have all that talent coming back. And I told you already about like how they've recruited. It's not been at an elite level. It's been right around 15th in the country, and usually a little bit outside of that. You're going to drop a game to either USC, Michigan State, or Illinois, or somebody you shouldn't. Like just flat out.
Yeah. No, I just I know that they've recruited. That's the thing too, is like they've recruited well, but you haven't recruited at that Ohio State, Georgia, Bama level where it's like you lose 10, 12 players to the draft and you're just as good the next year.
Right.
Don't know much about Alex Orji. We're gonna like saying his name all year.
For sure.
Yeah, Jack Tuttle, who's another quarterback there. Like, coming off a guy that you get drafted in the first round, whether he deserved to be or not. JJ McCarthy was a 5-star. Jim Harbaugh said he's the best quarterback to ever come through the program. To a guy who you used in like special packages like 3 times last year.
Yeah.
So I think that's an easy answer as well. What about what your team most likely to rise?
So I have 3 that jump out to me, and it would be USC, it would be Miami, and then what was the other one? I would probably make a case for Tennessee. I am high on Tennessee, so maybe something like that. But this is for the end of the season. I would probably stick with one of those 2 teams. I think that one of those 2 teams is. I think Miami is just they've done what we've talked about for weeks now, which is like they are all in on this year, and they have put out a ton of money on this year, and the people they brought in are quality players. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they mesh. Like we saw Cam Moore be a stud, especially in the first half of last year at Washington State. Now he's your go-to guy, and he got there early too. Remember that? Like he got there early and has been like putting in work with like all those guys, and they've kind of built a lot around him. Damian Martinez is one of the more underrated running backs in the country for Oregon State. Now he's going to get to go behind what you'd assume would be a good offensive line, right? Yeah. Like with Mario Cristobal being the head coach, and then just everything they have on defense too is like they have gotten. It seems like kind of a who's who, especially in the second portal of some defensive guys. So I think Miami has a chance to do it. And then the other one, man, I'm going to regret this possibly later, but I'm going to buy stock on USC. And maybe that's stupid because the schedule's not easy. You have LSU, which is going to be most likely a loss. Utah State, then you get a week off before you're at Michigan. I think that they go to Michigan and like prove a point in that game. Wisconsin at home. At Minnesota, Penn State at home, at Maryland versus Rutgers, at Washington versus Nebraska, at UCLA, and then Notre Dame. I think they win 10 games. I think that they like this could be a team too that like by the end of November, we're talking about a potential top 5 lock, like in like a showdown with Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, possibly because they don't have Oregon on that schedule, right? And I know Penn State, like that's a tough one, but you get them at home. Some of these road games, like at Minnesota, at Maryland, like Washington's going to be a shell of themselves from what they were a year ago.
Yeah, you get Rutgers. I mean, I could see it. The defense obviously is going to have to improve a ton. They finally got rid of, what's his name? Guy that was like the darling DC forever.
Yeah.
They bring in UCLA's D coordinator, DeAnton Lynn. They just have so many strides to take. You lose the number 1 player in the draft. I don't know if I can get on that. Miami, I could see for sure because Cam Ward is the ultimate X factor. I think if he's really good, so will be Miami. But we'll see. I can't buy on USC though.
Okay, so hear me out here though. Like Wisconsin could be decent. You get Wisconsin the week after they play. That's an interesting game because you are at Michigan, which I think I think they win. And Wisconsin's coming off the Bama game. So two pretty big games back-to-back for both those teams. I just don't think Minnesota is going to be great. And then like you get Penn, all your toughest games besides LSU are at home, and like Michigan's on the road, like I said, but like Penn State at home, Nebraska, which could be a sneaky game, that's at home, and then Notre Dame to close the season, that's at home. And it's not like Coliseum has like a tremendous home field advantage. I'm just saying you're not. This is the difference between even going to Pac-12 stadiums, because like you're not going to like Outson right now this year. You're not going to like rainy Corvallis. You're not going up to Washington to play like, you know, in a pretty tough environment there. You're going to Minnesota and Maryland and these half full stadiums where the biggest thing you're going to have to fight probably in that game is, you know, the temperature.
Yeah, I mean, jet lag.
Yeah, probably that too.
That'll be one thing that would be interesting to watch with some of those West Coast teams is you don't see a lot of conference games where it's like the NFL when, you know, a West Coast team comes east and they're playing a 1 o'clock game. Like, think about that. Like, if USC goes east, they go to, I don't know, Maryland, and they play a noon game. Likely will be, right? It'll be like a 9 a.m. game for them.
That is, I think, something that's super weird, because it's like Fox has built this whole thing on the big noon kickoff, and it's pretty brilliant if you think about it. People might not like it, but like they have created a ton of excitement. And I think for a long time we always were like, oh man, if it's less than night game or 3:30, probably because like the region we're in. But like they have created this like massive brand for like big noon kickoff, and it's going to be very unfair for 4 of those teams that just joined the conference.
Yeah. Or if they're doing a home game out there, the big noon kickoff is a big 9 a.m. kickoff for local.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that either. So I wonder how that's going to play out. Like, that'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So I saw a lot of consternation online. I think it was about as people were just up in arms about the college football coaching rankings that the guys from Cover 3 did. Tom Fernelli, Danny Canal, Bud Elliott, Chip Patterson.
I didn't see that.
I don't think Kirby's the best coach.
Oh my God. Are you just saying things?
I'm just kidding. I
mean, we're trying to build this thing, but like, let's not do it that way.
No. So you don't want to RJ Young it?
I saw something the other day from him.
Shedeur Sanders too, like just his ability to be a coach. Probably.
Okay. Let me tell you what I saw. That dude is the dumbest person. Somebody sent me something he had the other day that was like, he did. Maybe he said something wrong, but I doubt it, because it's Fox and they have a ton of people that put out like edit those, like his content. But it was like the top 10 coaches of the CFP era. And I it was like in my feed, and he was like, top 10 coaches of the CFP era. Let's start right here at number 10, Deion Sanders. And I was like, there's no fucking way he just said that. Like, what? Anyway, we're not going to do it the RJ Young style. So I didn't see the On 3 rankings for coaches.
It was Cover 3, the podcast from CBS Sports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember what they were?
I could pull it up. I mean, everyone had Kirby 1, but I think like a couple, like Tom Fernelli had like Dabo 2 still.
That's interesting.
I think there was a lot of people there was a lot of discussion about Lincoln Riley, because some guys had him top 5. Some, like Bud Elliott, was like, the dude hasn't had an offense ever. I mean, a defense ever. Like, until he does, he can't be a top 10 coach. Like, you could be a coordinator. Yeah. You know, Brian Kelly, there's probably some argument there based upon maybe the same thing thus far in his tenure at LSU. Like, yeah, you've had some pretty good offenses, but like, we're going to play some defense. It's kind of our calling card here down Baton Rouge.
Can I give you my take on Brian Kelly?
Yeah, please.
Because I'm not trying to be arrogant or say that I'm the smartest one in the room, but I think it's the best take on Brian Kelly that's out there. I really do. I fully believe this in my heart. Brian Kelly, there's not a coach in the country that is more skewed in terms of their perception of him, like the public perception of him, and like who he is as a coach and how good of a coach he is. There's not a more skewed perception of any head coach in college football than there is Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly is one of the most winningest coaches in the entire country currently, right? Like he's won at every single level. He won at, I think, Division II. Then he won at Cincinnati. Like people forget, like, he took Cincinnati to an undefeated season and then took them to a what do you call it? A BCS bowl at the time. Then he went to Notre Dame, took them to a national championship within their first 5 years. And he like went to the playoffs like several times. Like Brian Kelly has put up more 10 wins. He's had in a 10-win season, I believe, in over half of his total years coaching. He's won at least 10 games or more. Not a lot of players or not a lot of coaches can do that. And he did it at a place at Notre Dame, which was pretty difficult in general, just like because they were playing with a less cards in the deck compared to a lot of teams around the country in terms of like recruiting and what they were allowed to do. But his entire the entire perception of him as a head coach has been skewed because of 3 games. 2012, when they lost to Alabama by 28 in the national championship. 2018, when they got boat raced by Clemson in the college football playoff. And then 2020, when they lost to Alabama again by 17. And here's the thing. I have jumped on this as well because Notre Dame they always seem to lose the big games. They have not won a New Year's Six bowl or BCS level game since January 1st of 1995 when they beat Texas A&M. I believe it wasn't the Rose Bowl. It was something. Maybe it was the Cotton Bowl by 3 total points, right? They have not won a game like that since 1995. And
that's crazy.
That's really tough to do. And like, dude, I remember I did a full video on this one time and it was like, Georgia Tech has done that. Oregon State beat them like 41. Like the losses have been a lot and they've been by a lot, right? But let's take a step back because I do fully believe that like the reason why people don't think he's a good coach is because he can't win the big one. You and I have talked about this off air. Since when is like the benchmark for every team winning a championship? Only one team wins a championship every year. To sit here and say like, oh, that coach sucks because he can't win a big one. Like what? Like that's not every team can win. Right. And you talk about those 3 games because I think that's what built the perception. Dude, he lost to Bama in a national title game when that team won their 3rd national title in 4 years. Like they were clearly the best team in the country. Then in 2018, they got beat.
The recruiting's not even close, and it's not necessarily a Brian Kelly thing at Notre Dame.
Right. They lose to Clemson in 2018, 30-3. That is by all means a team that is considered to be a top 5 team of all time. And they lose to them, and everyone's like, oh, they suck. Okay, and then you go to 2020, and they lose by 17 to that Alabama team, which I believe was the closest game besides Florida that any team played them all year. Georgia lost by 17, Notre Dame lost by 17, and Florida lost by like 6. Like that team is not arguably is one of the top 3 teams in the history of college football. And it's just wild to me that Brian Kelly has been pegged as this like really, that's the clip by the way, that he's been pegged as this like, underachieving coach when he's really overachieved everywhere he's been. And he got to LSU. We all thought he was going to fail. And he has back-to-back 10-win seasons. He has a top 3 recruiting class for next year, including the number 1 overall player in the country from Michigan, by the way. And then also has won the SEC West in his first year, beat Alabama at home. Like, what are we talking about with Brian Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that these top guys on the list, I mean, you're trying to nitpick. Like, someone brings up Ryan Day in the chat. Like, and I think most programs would take Ryan Day as their coach, and yet we've been nitpicking Ryan Day for not winning big games for the last 3 years because Michigan's beat their ass.
More first-round picks than total losses.
That's crazy. Like Sark, like everyone's on the Sark train, but like Sark's never won a big game. Like his first big game in Austin, they got pretty well handled by Washington, who has less talent. Or I shouldn't say that. Oh yeah, they do. I like as far as an overall roster, but Washington had some really good high-level players as starters, right. But like I'm sure Texas was a lot deeper than Washington was last year. So this is Graham Coffey's 2024?
Yeah, and I'm going to bring this up for multiple reasons. One, because I know that you and Graham don't see eye to eye a bunch. 2, we're going to have Graham on the show tomorrow night at 8 o'clock for our Tuesday show Wednesday, by the way, we will have Duke. Why don't I know his last name? I just call him Duke the Scoop from On 3. Duke will be on here. We've had him on here a bunch. We've always had a really good time with him. he's a former Auburn guy. He's now at On 3. Doing a great job talking about recruiting. So those will be the shows for this week. We haven't figured out Thursday yet. But Graham came out with his top 15 coaches. One, the graphic looks great. Whoever made the graphic just did a tremendous job. Your thoughts on this?
I don't have a ton of. I mean, Whittingham at 3, like I get it. Utah's been good, but if you're telling me go down the list of current head coaches, and you have your pick of who's going to be the coach at Florida State, for example, I don't think Whittingham would come up 3 for me.
So that's an interesting way to go about it, because I think that if you were talking about who you would want to build your program, that guy sitting there at number 10 is probably top 3.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's a top 3 or top 5 coach.
Yeah, I agree with Evan Grimes. Obviously, I'm biased, but Norvell beat Brom last year. I don't see how you could have Brom over him. Stoops, I don't see how you could have him over that either. I mean, Florida State did go undefeated last year after winning 3 games 2 years ago. So he's done a really good job. He's one of the first coaches to implement the portal the right way.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd rather have Drinkwitz than Stoops, to be honest. I think Drinkwitz has done a really good job. Gundy's one of those.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Gundy's one of those that, like, we always talk about how great of a coach he is, and Oklahoma State's always been pretty good. But I mean, at this point, would you really want Gundy over like Drinkwitz or Norvell or like Brom?
No.
Like, I just.
But again,
I don't know. Gundy doesn't really do it for me anymore.
Yeah, because of his looks, he's lost his.
Yeah, I mean, ever since we talked to him live and in person.
That's true. I think there are different ways to look at it. I think that when you talk about like, hey, here's who I would want to build a program around. Here's who I would want to be my head coach. I think it's different. I think it's also, there's so many moving parts to it now when you talk about like head coaches and where they should be, because dude, Norvell is a guy that, like you said yourself, right? Like you're biased, whatever. One of the most difficult things, he's had to do something that's more difficult than I think than probably anybody on this list, besides maybe Brian Kelly, but I would still say it's more difficult. He had to come in and in all the changes that were happening with college football, right? Like with the portal and everything else that's happening in NIL, he had to come pick Florida State out of the mud from where they were and became this embarrassment of a program where, and you know better than anybody, 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, was at the mountaintop. They were the mountaintop, really. Yeah. And you talk about having to reinstill and rebuild a culture in this stage of football where, like, especially in that state where like Florida is like, they were doing really well under Mullen, and Miami's always going to be Miami. But like in that state where you're having to like, dude, they were a laughing stock because of what Willie Taggart did, where everything has been like under a microscope and people enjoyed watching them lose. He slowly built them back up to relevancy.
Yeah. And by the way, his first year was COVID too. So like he instilled his culture over Zoom with a team that already had terrible culture.
Yeah.
Terrible. I mean, so yeah, I just think he needs to be given much more credit here. But I'm kind of over Gundy. Like, and Stoops, like, I think he's a good coach. Yeah. But I wouldn't put him in the top 15.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I will say that Eli Drinkwitz making this is fascinating to me. And like I said, we'll get into more of it tomorrow with what do you call it, with Graham. But dude, Drinkwitz, again, 3 or 4 straight losing seasons. And then I think it's 4 straight losing seasons. And then they pop last year. They win 11 games. They go to, they go to, and they beat Ohio State and all that kind of stuff, which is awesome.
Preseason top 10 potentially.
Yeah. I think that you could make the case for everyone in here. I think that after, like, at some point, though, it's like, this is why it's so difficult to argue this, because it's like there's so many different components that you could make as like, dude, like Graham especially hated Sark. Nobody shit on Sark more than him over the last couple of years, and now he's at 2, which is something we'll get into, like I said, tomorrow. But like there's just so much that I feel like that goes into it. I will tell you one thing that I thought that was fascinating to me about this was I've seen this with several fans, and I think it's where are we at here? Damn it. Do we even do one? There it is. And it's like the Lanning, like the Dan Lanning love. I think that the perception of him is also kind of skewed from what I see on a daily basis, mainly because what I see on a daily basis is Georgia fans like on social media, and that's who we interact with a lot more and all that kind of stuff. The truth about Dan Lanning and why that fan base specifically, but a lot of people have like pegged him probably higher than he is you want to sit here and say like it's the first main guy that's come from the Kirby tree, right? Mm-hmm. And you hold him to this like standard where it's like, dude, he's out there, he's winning, he's recruiting at an elite level, and dude, that's a perfect matchup. That's a perfect match with him going to Eugene, where you're like, you can bring kids in that NIL program that is completely next level in comparison to a lot of other programs. Like not only with the amount of money they have, but you're talking about getting kids like stock options and shit. That and that like alumni database when you graduate and like all that kind of stuff that you can pitch to these kids, it's just different at Oregon. So I think it's a phenomenal fit. At the same time, like let's not forget that 2 years ago he went to Atlanta in the first game of the year with a future first round draft pick at quarterback and a top 10 team and got absolutely fucking wrecked by Georgia. And a lot of teams did by Georgia that year. But like the idea that he is somehow,
and he also lost his 2 biggest games last year to the same team.
That's the main thing, because like we that's what I hate when I see this kind of stuff. Is like we have a moving target of like, oh well, Brian Kelly can't win the big game, and it's not with these ranks specifically, but just fans in general. He can't win the big game. Then you look at Lanning, and you're like, dude, he's 0-3 against DeBoer in the last 2 years. Sark is 0-2 against DeBoer in the last 2 years. Lanning, what big game did he win that I missed?
Yeah, I mean, I think he got a lot of hype off that viral moment before the Colorado game where he probably looked at their roster, which was not good, and said, "We're going to beat the shit out of these guys, and I'm going to take advantage of this." And we don't play for clicks and all that. And then they go out and they beat the shit out of Colorado, but then you find out like Colorado is really not that good. They were 4-8 last year, so. Right. I agree. Like I think for Lanning, it's more so the potential, the upside potential for him in the future, more than what he's done so far. Because what he's done so far has been okay, but to your point, he had a first round pick at quarterback the last 2 years, and they the big games that they played in didn't go so well for him. So,
and I think again, and really great, Evan. Hopefully, you guys will be back here tomorrow as we'll get more in depth with this, but like. The one thing I would say with Lanning, because I think he's a fascinating case study. Same with Ryan Day. Ryan Day is like, dude, I don't know. I think Ryan Day is a top 5 coach. I do 1,000%. You do not have more first round picks than losses, and then say you're a bad coach. And also that whole idea that he can't win the big game. I know he's lost 3 games in a row to Michigan, but like Michigan has made the CFP in the last 3 years, right? Yeah. They lost to Georgia by 1 point, and because they missed the last second field goal and they had a lead in that game, Georgia went on to win their back-to-back national championship, right? Like they lost 2 games in 3 years. Who else did he lost to Bama in 2020, and Bama was like undefeated in the top 3 team in the history of college football. And I think they lost 1 home game to Oregon that year in 2021. Now I will say this, the thing with Lanning that makes it so fascinating too, is that like, I'm high on DeBoer. I think DeBoer is going to be great. But if you were talking about building a program for like longevity, I would still want Lanning more than DeBoer because he's proven all the stuff he can do off the field. But going back to the coaching part, and this is something Graham made a good point about, like, dude, the coaching decisions from Lanning over the past couple of years have not been great. Like the fourth down decisions, and they've led to losses directly.
Yeah, he's definitely a new school coach when it comes to like analytics and when you should go for it on 4th down, like almost too much.
Yeah,
arguably, because especially one of those games against Oregon, it cost them dearly. Shit, we're already at 55 minutes. What do you want to end on here? Dream I don't really like as far as Florida State leaving the ACC. I don't have a solid update. I mean, they are fighting to right now the fight is, where is the court case going to be held? Is it going to be held in North Carolina or in Florida? And we're just dragging it out here. Florida State's going to leave the ACC. So is Clemson. Probably a couple others. If I had to guess right now, I would say Florida State's going to be in the Big Ten, which is weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
But that is from what I've heard on my side of things, that's the most likely landing spot. We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I would think 2025 will be Florida State's last season in the ACC.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm sure we'll get more updates on that as the thing goes on. Yeah, man, we'll close with this. What was I going to say? So, SEC baseball tournament starts this week. ACC as well. Have you been watching college baseball at all this year?
I catch it if there's nothing else on, but I don't really tune into it primarily.
Okay, it's been hard to get access to it unless you have ESPN Plus, because I've said this for years. Postseason women's softball, I wish got so much more attention, and they finally started putting games on. I don't really need regular season games as much if there's not any kind of star power involved. The star power in this year's baseball, in the SEC and then in general, I think has been really awesome. What's up, Harry Legee? Georgia has Charlie Condon, who I'm sure you've heard of at this point. Just won the SEC Player of the Year.
Beast.
And then I'm trying to think. They have Jack Caglianone. He is obviously at Florida. The kid from Arkansas, who is Hagen Smith, the pitcher. He's averaged 17.9 strikeouts per 9 innings.
Jesus,
that's insane. That's absurd to me. So I'm excited for that. I think the next 3 days for SEC baseball tournament are 3 of the more underrated days of the year on the sports calendar. And I'm excited for that. The game starts tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. UGA versus LSU, by the way. And that was the last question I was going to say. You know what? Fuck it. We'll do 2. First question. This is from Evan. What do you think? What do you put on your hot dog? What should go on a hot dog and should not go on a hot dog?
So, I know there's this great discussion over if you should put ketchup on a hot dog.
Why?
I don't really hate on people that put ketchup on hot dogs, but I used to when I was a child. But then when I started hearing people make fun of people and I was still impressionable, I was like, you know what? Maybe I just won't put ketchup on the hot dog. I didn't know it was this big of a deal, and I do like it better, actually. Over time,
without ketchup?
Without ketchup. So I go mustard, throw some onions on there.
Uh-huh.
If you've got chili, I'll take it. I'm not going to necessarily order it, but if it's there, I'll put it on there. I do like relish. I think it's the only dish that I would ever eat relish with. So
yeah, for sure.
Honestly, I'm not a big hot dog hater. I put whatever you want, but those are probably my go-to: mustard, relish, onions, a little chili. You got it.
I feel like a chili dog is a different animal altogether. That's different even than a hot dog.
Yeah, it is.
I put ketchup on a hot dog always. I didn't know that. I don't understand why that's not dude. Here's the thing, and I don't care if this is going to sound preachy or pretentious, whatever. If you are taking time out of your day to lecture someone on what's on a hot dog, what they should eat on it, fuck off. It's a hot dog. It's made for children and poor people and baseball games. That's it.
Let some smart ass kid get on this phone and create this stuff.
Tyler, I've seen this, and of course it's on Barstool a bunch. I saw our buddy Cruz post about it. It's oh man, dude, I don't care if anyone says I'm putting ketchup on a hot dog. Who fucking cares? Dude, hot dogs are made of God knows what. It's basically like outer space. We don't know what's in there. Hot dogs are the bottom of the ocean. We have no fucking clue what's really in there at all. And so if we're going to eat a hot dog, let's not judge what we put on top. If you're going to judge someone for eating a hot dog, you should judge them for just eating the hot dog, not what they put on the hot dog to make whatever's in there better.
Right.
We'll close with that. You know what? We'll close with that.
All right. Hey, if you're listening to the podcast right now and you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go give us a subscription. A lot of the stuff that we're doing these days and we'll continue to do into the regular season will be more like audio and visual. So we bring up charts, bring up rankings, all that kind of stuff. So it's better to follow on YouTube. By all means, please continue to listen to the podcast if that's your best way to do it. But we'd appreciate it if you subscribe, like on YouTube. If you hit the little bell, you'll get a notification when we go live. So I got that when we went live on my phone, which was cool. And yeah, we'll bring back the hotline as we get closer to the season.
Yeah.
As a reminder, once the video game comes out, I'm gonna figure out a way to stream my PS5 and we'll play it, get the chat going, and you guys can watch me play that game, which I'm not good at, but it'll be fun. And don't forget about the daily podcast that Chris is doing every single day. Chris, remind everybody who the guests are this week again.
Yeah, so every night this week we'll do it at 8 p.m. Eastern, so Tuesday through Thursday. Tomorrow we have Graham Coffey from the Players Lounge and Dogs, who's Dogs United, his site. And then we will be talking about the coaching rankings and all things Georgia. So that'll be a fun one for our Georgia crowd. And then Wednesday we have Duke the Scoop from On 3, formerly of 247. He is a recruiting guru, also pretty up to date with all things Auburn as well. So that'll be the Tuesday, Wednesday shows, and then we'll figure out Thursday.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all of you guys that came in live. For Chris, I'm Tyler. We will talk to you guys. Well, Chris will talk to you tomorrow. How about that? You guys have a good night.